time being just a construct in our in our minds anyways.
Don't know where I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I may or may not have mentioned that before we pressed record.
Before we got out, yeah. That's right.
Well, hello there. I'm Cool Gray, and you are listening to Cool Gray in Studio A. Welcome back. We're in episode 4. Can you believe that? I'm still wrapping my head around it, honestly. As I am recording this today, I am looking forward to episode 1 actually being released tomorrow. So I'm a little ahead of the game, and I don't yet know exactly what the reception is going to be, but I am very excited about the guests that I've brought you so far, the ones I've got lined up, and the ones that I am hoping to secure for you going forward. I really am trying to bring you a quality product and some really interesting conversations with some really interesting guests. And I really hope you're along for the ride and enjoying it. If you are, and you've been with me for the first 3 episodes, and you'd like to help me build a community, I would love it if you would share this podcast on your own social media networks. Tell a friend. It can take sometimes years in the sea, in the ocean of podcasts that are out there, for one to really begin to get some traction and build an audience. So you can help launch this and get us off to a really great start by helping to spread the word. If you do that, let me know. How can you let me know? Well, I'll tell you. Thanks so much for asking. It's the goofball factor, folks, part of authentic living. Just a little something you're going to have to live with. You can find me on coolgraystudios.com. If you go to the blog, there's a blog entry for every single episode. So sometimes there's additional media or additional information, or even just my own personal thoughts about the guest that I've just interviewed that you can find there. And more importantly, there's a place where you can leave some comments. So your feedback is crucial to me at these early stages. I want to know what you're thinking, what you loved, what you'd like to hear more of. And that's a great place to do it. Another place is to find me on Patreon. And yet another place is to find me on my Facebook page, also Cool Gray Studios, where you're welcome to comment there. And I hope you do. I'm already working on the 2023 schedule. I've already told you about the rest of this series, Creativity Born of Trauma, and the one following, which is Personal Paranormal Encounters. And boy, do I have some stuff lined up for you on that one. This series is going to take us right up until the new year. I'm going to be launching big with personal paranormal experiences in January. And then after that, I've got 2 more series coming up right behind them. They'll be slightly shorter series in terms of the number of episodes, because I really want to branch out and be talking to you about a wide variety of things. So I don't want to get too hyper-focused on one subject for too long, so that you can look forward to what's next at every turn. So after Personal Paranormal Encounters, I am going to be bringing you a series called Changing Ideas on Mental Health. And I've got some people that are in that field who are willing to come and talk about things like ADHD, depression and anxiety, autism, and some practitioners who work in some very interesting fields like hypnotherapy. So that's in the works at the moment. Following that, another series, and that one will be called The Creative Process. So for all you creatives like me out there, you can listen to some really wonderful conversations with people who are creators in any number of areas, who will talk to us about what happens from the moment of that first spark of inspiration through to a finished piece, whatever that is. So I'm working on securing some guests for that one right now, and I will bring you more information about that when I have it. For right now, I'm going to take just a quick moment to have a short break, tell you a little bit about Patreon, and after that, we'll introduce you to our guest and have that conversation. Stay with me. Hey, Cool Gray here. I want to talk to you for just a minute about Patreon. Patreon is a social media platform where you can support this podcast, my YouTube channel, and other artists who are doing what I'm doing, which is making stuff happen on our own dime, on our own time. This is a way that you can support those efforts. And if you're enjoying this podcast, I would encourage you to join me over there. Not just because it helps me, but there are perks, people. Let me tell you what those are. At the very first tier of support, just $5 a month, you will get 24-hour advance access to every single episode in its audio format. At the $10 level and above, you will get a full video version of every single episode. That is not available anywhere else. Why is that amazing? Well, you'll be able to learn such things as, what do my guests even look like, especially when they're talking? Did I apply my eyeliner evenly? Am I wearing the same outfit as I was last episode? Do I have broccoli in my teeth? These are the things that are burning in your souls. I know you want to know the answers, and that's where you can find out. If you're not feeling goofy, I can also tell you that you'll get exclusive access to bonus content not available anywhere else, monthly minisodes and quarterly blooper reels. I am also offering fan access. You can make requests. You can say, hey, Cool Gray, make a minisode about this, or why don't you talk about that? And I will listen to you. I may not actually do it, but I will listen to you. I am doing everything that you see here, from the writing to the editing to the recording to the promotion to the graphics. It's all me by myself, and I'm just really trying to cover my costs. I would love to welcome you over there to become a part of this exclusive community that gets all the nifty stuff that the rest of you are missing out on. So come on over to patreon.com, find me as Cool Gray Studios. There's a link in the show notes that will take you there more directly, and I thank you for considering that. So I'd like to introduce my guest today. Dr. Tonia Winchester has been in practice as a naturopathic doctor since 2007. Now, as a brain-based transformation coach, she uses contemporary neurological reprogramming techniques to help women break through burnout, stress, anxiety, and fatigue, and find joy and energy again so they can create exceptional lives for themselves, their families, and communities. Tonia has been featured on CTV, The Costco Connection, The Elephant Journal, Conscious Nutrition, and several other podcasts. She's an executive contributor at Brains Magazine, writing monthly articles. Tonia, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's talk a little bit, if we could, about your background and how you got started in this field of work.
Yeah. I wanted to become a naturopathic doctor when I was very young because I became quite disenchanted with the Western medical system. Going through my own health challenges as a child and as a teen, I just wasn't getting the answers that I was wanting. And in grade 12, I was actually introduced to alternative medicine. And it was just like, oh, there's other options out there, ways that I can help people and be kind to people and really get to the root cause of what is causing struggling and suffering. And so I went into university, and immediately after university studied naturopathic medicine and became a naturopathic doctor. And I loved being a naturopathic doctor for a long time until I didn't. And the reason I didn't is there was just this level of dissatisfaction that I was finding, because I would sit with a patient and put together this awesome treatment plan for them. And they'd come back to me and they'd be like, eating my broccoli is hard. And I'm making light of this metaphor, but essentially they'd come back and say whatever it was that they needed to do to take care of themselves was really hard. And I sat with this for a long time, fascinated by this decision in human psychology where we decide to show up for ourselves and take care of ourselves, and then do that again the next day, and then do that again the day after that. And realizing it's not the actual act, it's not going to bed at 10 or drinking enough water or eating our broccoli or getting enough exercise. That's hard. It's the decision to do that. Sure. And then I became really interested in why it's hard to take care of ourselves. And I had many false starts looking for a solution to this problem that I had discovered, until I landed on something called Neuro-Linguistic Programming and its discovery as a tool to help people with this root cause moment of decision making for their own well-being, for their own worth, really opened up a lot of doors of possibilities. And just seeing how using those tools that come out of NLP allows people to rediscover their own worth and their own value, which allows them to, show up for themselves on a daily basis.
So that's something you added to your practice.
Yes.
After how many years living without it?
Living without it, yes, life before. So I've been in practice now 2007. So we're coming up on 16 years, and I discovered NLP 2 years ago. and incorporated it into my work. And I have this really neat sort of side-by-side comparison where patients were coming to me for years and years and years, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, and we'd sit down and we'd kind of have the same conversation over and over again. I can't do X because of Y, or I'm stressed because of this, and therefore I can't do this self-care act or whatever it was. And some of those patients became clients and went through this process I take people through. And now I don't see those people in my office anymore. They finally got the transformation that they were looking for. So they don't need to touch base with me monthly, quarterly anymore. The little chickies have flown the nest, and that's very satisfying.
Your goal is to never see your patients again.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, to put yourself right out of business. What a beautiful concept. Well, let me ask you what neuro-linguistic programming is. My assumption is, if you're saying you just integrated it 2 years ago, it was not a newly available technique just 2 years ago. It's been around a while. Yeah.
It has been. Yes. It was developed in the 70s and the 80s by two gentlemen. And what they did was they recognized there were certain people working with clients who, whether they were in family counseling practices or medicine or different therapies, and they just started observing these people and really taking from them what was successful. So NLP started as this model of excellence. What is working? What is actually having the benefit that people are wanting to have? And so they kind of amalgamated several bodies of knowledge and created what's called neuro-linguistic programming. So historically, that is sort of how it came to be. And what it is this way of using very specific language and tuning into how people receive information and tuning into how people interpret information and speaking to those people in those ways to really directly communicate with the unconscious mind. So bypassing the thinky part of the mind, bypassing the part of us that wants to be really right, clever, and smart, and accessing the part of our bodies and our minds that allows change to happen, that allows healing to happen, that allows learning to happen. And when we can access this point in our whole being, we get transformational and powerful change.
So how to use linguistics to bypass the thinky part of the brain is mysterious and fascinating to me. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. So I'll give an example. So when things happen to us in our lives, let's say when traumas happen to us in our lives, it changes how we filter the world, how we see and experience the world. And what that means is now, from that point on, we might always imagine that somebody is doing something intentionally to harm us when maybe that is not their intention at all. And so as people tell their stories, I'll get clues about how they're actually experiencing their world. If someone says to me, my back is killing me, that's an example. Like they literally feel like their back is out to get them. So language leaves clues, but then we can actually use those clues to kind of override the part of the brain that tries to be really rational. So maybe someone says like, nobody likes me. Well, that's absolutely not true. Obviously, there's people in life that like you, but their interpretation of how the world is around them is that nobody likes them. So I can start using language that starts to kind of challenge those filters. Really, absolutely every single human on the planet does not like you. And they start to be like, well, no, of course, that's not true. And so we wiggle past the part that has this like, I believe this, and actually start to sort of pull out the threads of that tapestry, that woven sort of set of belief systems. And that's part of it. Sometimes it's very subtle in terms of just how I ask a question to someone, which allows that structure, that belief system to just kind of like crumble and disintegrate. And sometimes we actually do have to do sort of formal techniques that allow the unconscious mind to kind of unravel and unwrap how it has programmed itself from our traumas, from the things that have happened to us that, again, change how we see the world.
So that does not sound to me like something I would expect to happen at a doctor's office. That feels to me like something I would expect to find in a therapist's office. So tell me how that works in the context of your practice.
Yeah, I love that. So I took an oath when I graduated from naturopathic college to get to the root cause of illness. And that's not in a supplement. You know, we're not we're not sick because we're not taking enough vitamin D. I mean, to some degree we are, but really the fact that our body is needing that nutrient implies that there's some other sort of stress going on that it's needing to use more, or say B vitamins, for example. When we're stressed, we use more B vitamins. So then is the B vitamin the root cause, or is the stress the root cause? And I would hypothesize that the stress that we've experienced in our lives and how we keep it and how we interpret it, and again, how it sort of filters our world, that is the root cause of the problem. So for me to get someone healthy, I'm in the business of changing habits. Naturopathic medicine is a lifestyle medicine. So if the ultimate goal is some sort of health outcome, and then we need to change their habits to make that happen, and they're not feeling like they want to or deserve to take care of themselves because of these belief systems and stresses that have happened in their lives, I have to work at that origin point. Otherwise, I'm not getting to the root cause of the problem. So yes, I think in true medicine, healing is derived from the word whole and health. They all are part of the same origin. We have to work holistically. We have to work with the mind and the body in concert. I think a lot of our health problems results because our brains, our minds, and our bodies are not integrated. And so my job, I feel like my role is to bring people back to the place where they can be whole again, where they can clear those root causes and allow them to move forward, making good choices for themselves and their families. Like the ripple effect of this work is really profound and exciting to me too.
Yeah, it sure is. I think part of the issue, you talked about at a very young age becoming disillusioned with traditional Western medicine, and certainly here in the US, I think we're conditioned from a very early age that when you feel some acute issue, you can go to a doctor, the doctor will do something to you or for you, and then you will get better. So this idea that we actually have to be an active and willing participant in our own health and well-being is alien to us. I imagine you have to overcome that with many of your new patients, maybe many of your old patients, established patients.
Yeah. And more, I think people are starting to reclaim that responsibility for themselves and sort of taking back their power from, doctors, the authority. I think we're all our own doctors and we have the power to be our own health advocates and practitioners. We just need to be given the tools to be able to do that effectively. Yeah.
Is it accurate to say that neuro-linguistic programming is working on neuroplasticity?
Yeah.
So
big time.
I don't know how many of my listeners are familiar with some of these techniques, but some of the other modalities that deal with neuroplasticity, in my understanding and from my personal experience, are things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and EMDR. If you know, you know. We don't have to go into that in any great detail. All of those seem to be trying to engage the unconscious or subconscious mind in order to change our belief systems. I'm just wondering, are these happy playground compatriots? Are they entirely separate things from each other? And why NLP for you?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on in terms of the intention of those modalities being rooted in that idea of neuroplasticity. Thank goodness science knows now that our brains can change. And the good news is that it doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't take a lot of effort. And that's why I'm really drawn to the tools of NLP, because I've been in this sort of transformation game for a long time, and it's the most effective thing that I've come across. It's fast, it is gentle and safe. The work is done in a way that is safely dissociated, so people aren't re-triggered and re-traumatized into the events of their past. It's very sustainably effective. The recurrence rate with NLP techniques is very, very low. And we do this survey at the beginning and the end of the process that I take people through. And even if we were to do the entire process, which takes about 12 hours, compacted that over, say, 2 days, I could do the exit survey again a year later and still see the same results, the same outcomes. So they're lasting. And there's no recovery time. So after we do work where we're clearing negative emotions out of the past or even clearing traumas out of the past, the person is immediately resilient in a way that they never were before since those events had happened. And they notice right away in their daily life the improvements in their neurology. And they see it in how they wake up with more energy, and they see it with how they interact with their loved ones. And they see it in how they start asking questions and getting curious about people instead of making assumptions and judgments without any sort of downtime. And so I really appreciate it's this sort of in, out, get in, get it done, get out kind of work. Because really, like, why delay suffering? Why prolong struggle? Like, life's too short, I think, for that.
I am mentally going through my contact list in my phone, trying to think of a single person that does not want what you just described. I got nothing. So yeah, let's talk about this process that you take people through. I know that it's called
Yeah.
a breakthrough with a capital
Yeah.
B.
Yeah.
What can you share with us about how that works?
Here's my analogy for the unconscious mind. When we're born, let's imagine that we're born with an empty filing cabinet. And then as we go through life and stuff happens, especially in the early years from say 0, 7 to 8 years old, people open up our filing cabinet and put their own files inside the drawers. And we just don't have the brain development at that age to say, you know what, I don't actually want this file in my filing cabinet. Maybe you should keep that file. Maybe that's yours and not mine.
Yeah.
Please don't bring it into my own cabinet. We don't have that ability. So now the filing cabinet is filled with all of these other files that don't belong to us. And by the time we're able to discern, is this for me? Is this not for me? It's too late. It's like the filing system has been set up in the cabinet. And that's now the lens through which we see the world. So everything that happens gets corroborated through this filing system. This one person said one thing to me, which means, oh yeah, it means that I'm not lovable. Right. Okay. So now that we have this sort of idea of how things get programmed in the unconscious mind, through learning, observing the world around us, we now know that we can actually go in and change the files that are in the filing cabinet. And this is what we do in NLP. And we do this in a way where first we open the drawer and we take out the files that are in the past that are no longer helpful and valuable. So these are things like unresolved negative emotions. We call them the big five. The main ones are anger, fear, sadness, hurt, and guilt. Those are the first things that we get rid of out of the filing cabinet. And not only do we get rid of them once, we get rid of the root cause event where that emotion was never resolved. And also along the entire timeline, like pulling the beads off a string of pearls. We know that the unconscious mind stores memories as categories. So say all your anger memories are together or all your camping memories are together, but then also in a timeline. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is, exactly. So the way I use the linguistics and the techniques allows the unconscious mind to be like, okay, I'm ready to release this root cause of anger, but then also all of the anger that happened in my entire timeline. So the first step of clearing out the filing cabinet is clearing the past. We clear negative emotions that have been unresolved in the past. We clear traumatic events. We clear significant emotional events, which I'm not going to define because people internally know what category events fall into for themselves. And then we also clear limiting decisions. And once all of that clearing is done, now we have a filing cabinet that has a bit more wiggle room into it. And we can introduce new files that we want to put in there. So after clearing the negative out of the past, we actually go back and reintroduce positive into the neurology, into the memories. So we go back and reconnect to our first experience of love and confidence and joy. And we bring that all the way through the timeline. So now we're putting in these new files that we're actually choosing consciously for ourselves that we want. And so that's the past. And then we work on the present. We work on feeling good in the here and now. So we change the neurology around our accessibility to those things right here, right now. And then the third step of the process, or I should say the third phase, is when we start to look towards the future. Now that we've got a filing system that's in alignment to who we are and who we want to be, how can we use that to move forward to reach a specific goal? So the last part of the process is focused on the future. So we've got this really beautiful sort of arc in time. Clear the past, focus on the present, and then look towards the future so that we can, integrate our entire timeline. Time being just a construct in our minds anyways. We can,
don't know where I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I may or may not have mentioned that before we pressed record.
Right before we got on. Yeah, that's right. So, but now all of these things exist in a way that support one's well-being and their own choices. I think one of the most important things of the work that I do is putting people back in the driver's seat of their own lives. Like they get to regain a sense of control isn't quite the right word, but resourcefulness. They get to decide for themselves in any given moment how they want to react, how they want to respond. And it's because we've taken this time to sort of reorganize that filing cabinet.
That's amazing. I want it. I want it for everybody around me. Where can I buy me a pound of that stuff? I'd like a pound of NLP sliced thin, NLP. Please. The reason that I am doing this particular series, it's called Creativity Born of Trauma. And so to the points that you're making here, the reason I started this podcast, I thought, was because it was just a great idea, and it was an idea whose time had come. But it was pointed out to me by a therapist that it might actually be a trauma response. It might actually be my way of processing and coping with a recent trauma once I got past the initial, immobilizing phase of that traumatic moment. And I've talked about that in some past episodes. So what I'm wondering here is when you're talking about getting back in the driver's seat of your own life, in my case, I felt like I was doing that, not realizing that there was an underlying motivation to this suddenly becoming the thing that had to happen. That really was not a conscious decision, as it wasn't as conscious a decision as I thought it was. It was coming from someplace I didn't have access to. And now I'm just kind of actualizing it and making it meaningful to me, and hopefully to at least one listener. That would be nice. And I know that you told me that you thought that your own personal experience might have some relevance here when you were writing your book, which we'll talk about in a minute, in terms of responding to trauma. Can you tell me about how all of that fits in with what you know of NLP and just how our brains work?
Yeah.
That was a very long-winded way to ask you a pretty simple question.
I hope I answer in an equally long-winded way.
I can't wait for that.
I love what you said, though. And when we initially talked, I kind of came to that conversation with the opposite idea, really, that when trauma happens, our creativity shuts down and we get blocked and we can't move forward and we can't express who we are because now we believe that's not okay. And after we talked and after you had originally said that to me, I left that conversation and I was sort of reflecting and I could sort of see points in my timeline where both were true. And I think that's actually the real gift of creativity in general, is that it is so potently reparative to our psyches. And unconsciously diving into, say, a really creative effort is a behavior that the unconscious mind is choosing for some sort of purpose. And whether or not we know what that purpose is at the onset of that, that's, left to be told. But for me, after we had that conversation, I was thinking back to the previous fall when we got a diagnosis for this neurological illness that my dad had, which ended up actually leading to his passing this past summer. And it was not long after we got that diagnosis and that prognosis where I dove in and started writing this book. The book is dedicated to my dad. At the beginning of the book, it says, "Dad, no matter where you are, wherever you are, I know you're always here." At that time, I was actually going through this process as a client with my coach. So that the process that I take people through, I was going through as a client. And when that process ended is when I started writing the book. And I think that this idea that both things can happen. Trauma can block creativity and impede us from moving forward. But also when it happens in that way, it just like unlocks us and we can move forward and put the past behind us in a way that's really healing. I think that when we're able to access that, when we're able to just flow with it and let be released what needs to be released, it's not only helpful to our own neurology, but also it is an offering to the people around us to heal as well. I think humans do better when they're relating to each other, and our own pain stories can be so helpful.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you integrate any forms of creative expression into your work with your clients in any kind of direct way? Or do you encourage them to explore that outside of your office?
The answer is yes, because they come to me wanting those things. One of the questions that I ask when I first sit with someone is, what are 3 things that you want to be doing, but you're not able to do now because of your problem, whatever the problem that they come to me is? And inevitably, everybody always says some sort of activity that is creative, whether that's art or whether that is even just creative problem solving in their relationships, some element of creativity that they're not accessing. And so then the work that we do allows them to get back into those things. And it's kind of like what I was saying before with eating the broccoli. I think our creativity practices as human beings is part of our self-care. I think it is one of the essential elements that allows us to, be well on all levels. And so if people are not able to do that because, again, they feel like they don't have enough time because they don't deserve to take the time or whatever the story is, changing their neurology so that now that becomes a priority for them is really exciting to see.
It is. I think often, I know as an artist, I participate in a number of artist groups on social media where people will join in order to say, I don't think I have any talent. I don't think that I can do this. And they're there because they're looking for validation and they're looking for encouragement, that the desire is in them. Because honestly, I believe personally that it's in all of us. We're fundamentally creative by nature.
Yeah.
And at the very least, we're creating our own existence, our own life,
Yeah.
moment by moment. And so we all want that on some level, because I think it's core to who we are as human beings. So very glad to hear you affirming that. And you created your creative expression after dealing with the loss of your dad was this book. It's called Smiling in the Shower. So is it an NLP book?
Yeah, it's kind of a marriage book of NLP and also naturopathic medicine. I think these two things, this lifestyle medicine of healthy habits and taking care of ourselves, is so well served by this process of reorganizing the filing cabinet so that we're really primed to do that self-care work, primed for the creativity that it takes to look after ourselves.
I actually purchased a copy of the book. I have not yet made it all the way through, but in the very early pages, there's a quote that I'd like to share with my audience and give you an opportunity to speak to, because it really spoke to me. And that is, this is the highest form of self-care, to reclaim authorship of your own story, to acknowledge your authenticity and act accordingly. And I would say, if we had to sum up what you're talking to me about in this entire interview, that really brings it all together. And it also has everything in the world to do with what I'm about and what I'm trying to accomplish with the podcast. So authentic living, what does inauthentic living look like? It's a rhetorical question, because I sure know the answer. but I want to hear from your perspective what you're looking for. What do you see change in your patients when you go, yes, we're there, we're getting somewhere?
Yeah. Inauthentic is hiding. It's this inability to say, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is why I'm here. This is how I can help. Inauthentic living is so depleting, because we're constantly putting on a mask, a face of who we're expected to be, who we are taught to be, what's in our filing cabinet of who we should be. And ultimately, nobody gets to decide that but ourselves. However, we're taught away from trusting that. We're trained out of acknowledging our own inner voice, wisdom, truth. This is a cultural, societal problem, that we are expected to be a certain way and be a certain person.
To the extent that I think sometimes we don't even realize that we should be looking for that authentic self ever, or until a much later part of our lives, when we're like, where has this been all my life?
Yes, exactly. And two sort of reflections of client stories that I'm going to share to say, because you asked kind of, how do I know, what, when things have shifted. The title of the book is one example. So Smiling in the Shower, that was a direct quote from one of my very first clients in NLP, who was one of those examples of a patient who I'd been seeing for years. And she wrote me this email in sort of this like nonchalant way. She's like, by the way, this morning, my husband caught me, was the word she used, caught me smiling in the shower. He said, you never smile. And she said, I don't know why I was smiling. I just woke up smiling. And that touched my heart so deeply. That woman, who's a teacher, is going to go forth. She's a music teacher. She's going to go forth into her day, bringing that smile with her to these young minds, to their young creative minds. And the ripple effect of her smiling in the shower, because of the neurological work that we did together, is going to affect those children and then their families and their parents and whoever those parents are interacting with. And it just got me so excited. It was just this simple marker of massive change.
It's awesome.
You never smile in the morning. You're smiling, honey. It's like, what? Okay. And then here's another example of the power of this work. So another client, very young lady, came to me with a lot of anxiety, a lot of pain in her body, and a lot of jealousy in her relationships. Jealousy is not an authentic expression of our trueness, right? It's a fear response. It's a trauma response. And it was affecting her. She's like, this is a good guy. I want to be with this guy, and I'm messing it up because I'm freaking out. And one of her early sort of imprinting file in the filing cabinets events was her mom was hit by a drunk driver and suffered some major brain trauma that, impeded her ability to be a mother. And so this young child at age 6, 7 started mothering her own mother. And whatever, came out of that for the rest of her life until we met, created all these patterns, all of these ways of interacting with people with fear and jealousy and, creating pain in her body. So we cleared the emotions, we cleared these traumas, particularly the day that she found out what had happened to her mom. And after that, she says to me, I kind of want to look up that driver now. And every behavior, I believe, has a higher intention, is meeting some sort of purpose. And I said, well, if every behavior is trying to meet a need, what need would that be meeting to look him up, right? And she said, I just want to see if he's okay now. And I was just like, oh, holy bananas. Like, this woman who was so angry for so long in her life because of what had happened now suddenly is curious and compassionate about this fellow. Like, that is neurological alchemy. And those are the types of things that I'm seeing change in people.
That's outstanding. Also, I'm wondering if holy bananas is a technical medical term or...
Yes, it is in the DSM-5. Yes, absolutely.
Love it. So who is Smiling in the Shower for?
This is a book for the person who is both overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. So this person is overbusy, overcommitted to things that aren't important to them, saying yes to people other than themselves, and therefore not taking care of themselves. And they're also really dissatisfied. They're unhappy. They know that there's more, there's potential out there that they're just not reaching. So both the overwhelmed and the underwhelmed at the same time. It's for the person who's anxious, stressed, knows that they have trauma. More and more people are coming to me saying, I'm sick because of my trauma. And I truly believe that the body remembers, it keeps score. There's a great book called The Body Keeps Score about this. And it's for the person who's having trouble sleeping. I call it the burnout cycle. It's this daytime stress for whatever cause, which is leading to often anxious states, which is then preventing sleep from being effective, which then we wake up tired and irritable and cranky. And that creates more stress, and the cycle continues. So it's people locked in that burnout cycle. It's for the people who say, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. I know to eat my broccoli, I'm just not doing it. It's the person who says, I'm stuck in the same patterns. I keep going into the same relationship over and over again. I keep, even though I break up with one person, I just start dating the same person in a different body. And it's for the people that have, they know that there's that creativity inside them that they're just not tapped into. It's for those people that are not able to connect into that flow, that healing flow that allows us to, like I say, just move on and express.
How does this book differ from any other book you're going to bump into in Barnes and Noble or on Amazon that falls into the quote self-help category? What can you expect when you get to the last page?
Yeah, I love that question. So I'm going to say that the book it offers a new lens to see the world in. And so that idea of changing our filters, it offers you some insight to have a deeper understanding about why things are the way they are and what needs to change to make that happen. And the changes are so simple. I hope this book actually shows people how simple it is to make these changes, to have this transformation. That's what I think is the most unique thing. Yeah.
Is it something that they can put into action in their lives right away, or would it be more of an introduction that would lead a reader to say, I need to go find me an NLP practitioner?
Right. Yes to both. There's some things that we can do on our own, for sure. The book it comes with a companion guide. When people buy the book, it comes with this little sort of workbook journal that you can self-reflect and answer questions and get a lot of internal guidance. And often for some people, that information is enough and they can make the shifts inside. And that's amazing. And then some people, the information isn't enough and they do need to sort of seek out that coaching transformation relationship. But the book is designed to give people as much as they can, and so they can do as much as they can on their own. Yeah.
How whole or healed from recent trauma or from ongoing, let's say an ongoing domestic abuse situation, or even just an extended period of being stuck, wherever you're stuck, how ready would you say someone has to be to begin to actually get a benefit from NLP? Is there something that comes before that, before you could engage them in this process? Or is it come to me in your utterly broken or utterly stuck space and I'll get you over that first hurdle?
Yeah, there does need to be a certain level of readiness. And I want you to consider this spectrum. So moving away from pain and then moving towards pleasure ultimately NLP is moving us towards pleasure. And some people, when they first approach me, asking if this is the right thing for them, I'll ask them what they want. And they'll say, well, I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be tired all the time. I don't want to be crabby with my loved ones. I don't want to be lashing out. I don't want to be having to rely on drugs to calm my anxiety. I don't want to be checking out in front of Netflix with wine. They're very clear about what they don't want. And I say, okay, awesome. So what do you want? Well, I don't want to...
I see where you're going with this.
They have nothing that they can even imagine for themselves moving towards. I can't really help those people. There needs to be some semblance of like, I want to go in this direction. And it doesn't need to be a lot, but just that glimmer has to be there for me to be like, okay, yes, we can do this work together. But if they're so locked into the pattern of struggle and suffering that they can't even like picture something different, yeah, I'm not the best fit.
What would you recommend for someone like that to help them get to this place where they could start working with you and with NLP?
I would ask the question, for what purpose? I used to be really obsessed with the question, why? Why is this happening? Why? And why is a great question to help us get to the root cause. It will, if we keep asking the question why, we will get to a place where we can no longer ask the question why, and we will be at the root cause of something. But that information isn't necessarily enough to move us forward. Asking for what purpose. So if someone is so convinced that they need to be stuck in their problems and stuck in their suffering, for what purpose? Every behavior is trying to meet a need and serve a higher intention. For what purpose is staying stuck? For what purpose is choosing to stay stuck? And just starting to use that question to kind of, maybe it's like picking the lock of the filing cabinet. Why is the filing cabinet locked? Well, there's pain and there's trauma in the past. We have to keep this all locked up and secure and safe. For what purpose, though? For what purpose is the way out? Why is the reason? For what purpose is the actual vehicle to get us out? So I would just start with that self-reflection question and just be willing to listen and be willing
move
to
them to the first square because they're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you say this is fast, how fast are we talking here?
I mean, I can clear trauma in 12 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating. I can get someone from a subjective measure of distress, say a 9, 8, 10 out of 10 to a 0, 1 out of 10 in 12, 15 minutes. That's just one sort of technique on its own. I don't do standalone techniques like that. I do, like I described, take people through this process. There's this beautiful therapeutic order when we do it in that way. So the entire process the breakthrough process is 12 to 16 hours, depending on the person, depending on their past, how much is there, depending on how much we need to work on. But what's fascinating is the unconscious mind gets really good at prioritizing what's important. So I keep asking these prioritizing questions to my clients. What's the most important trauma to clear now, such that when cleared, it will have this powerful benefit on you and your well-being and your goal. And they'll know. They'll age 5. We'll go, okay, we'll clear that one. So, they might give me a list of like 30 different events in their life. We might need to clear 3 or 4. And I always think of, there's this game that's like this glass or plastic tube with holes in it with sticks. Have you seen it? I think it's called Kerplunk. And there's all these marbles, marbles sitting on top. And I think the goal is to not let the marbles fall. But in this instance, as we pull out like one stick, maybe another stick, all those marbles, which I'm going to say are like the belief systems and the filters, they all kind of crumble. And we don't need to pull out every stick for that to happen. And that work can be done in a concentrated way. I've seen clients that I meet with just for a weekend, and we go through the entire process in a weekend, or spread it out over 3 or 4 weeks. The most typical pattern is I would meet with someone for 2 hours twice a week for 3 weeks, and we would get the main bulk of the process complete by that point.
That's more time than most therapists or doctors are spending with any of their clients. And to be honest with you, I don't know how anybody gets better in a 50-minute hour or in a 15-minute office visit. So good on you, doc.
And that's one of the things I love about NLP as well. I get to sit with someone and just be present with them for just like 2 hours of focused, attentive guidance. And it's very energizing.
In your bio, in the introduction that I read, it said that you are using your neurological reprogramming techniques to help women. Is your practice confined to women?
It is not, although probably 95% of the people I see are women.
Because they seek you out, or because that's a preference of yours?
A little bit of both. I like working with men. Men are quite straightforward to work with, although they just don't seem to be the ones coming around. Yeah.
Yeah, very often you don't find men kind of voluntarily trying to self-reflect or get in touch with their emotions quite as willingly. I know I was a grief counselor for a while, and I would
Yeah.
say the same thing. 95% of the people that came through the groups that I was running at the time were women. Every now and then you get a man because a husband and wife were grieving a loss together. I think only once did a male come on his own, and he stayed for one session and never came back.
Right.
So it's
Yes.
particularly tough for the fellas, I think, to get vulnerable on that
Yeah.
level. Do you work in your local area in person? Do you work virtually?
Because I'm governed by a college, my naturopathic college, we still have to wear masks in the office. And that's actually quite a big impediment to my work as an NLP practitioner, because there's a lot of subtle things that are happening in the face, going back to some of the linguistic piece. Your language shows up on your face with various,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
little clues and cues. And so it's really hard to see someone's adjustments and responses when they're wearing a mask. So I've been doing client work via Zoom. I do have plans to have a new coaching space that that I can meet with people in person, but that's down the road a few months yet. I wanted to circle back yet, though,
Yeah,
if you don't
sure.
mind,
Go.
the vulnerability piece that sometimes men have a hard time accessing, generalizing, of course. One of the cool things, another sort of check mark of what I love about NLP, is the work is content free, in that I rarely know what someone is actually working on and clearing when we do our work together. I love that, because we don't need to tell our story. We don't need to feel it to heal it, I guess, is the way to say that. I don't need to know someone's story to be able to help them unpackage the emotions that are connected to that story. And that's good for the client, because they're not repaving that same neural pathway. That's good for me, because I'm not being, traumatized by their trauma.
Yeah, you don't have to carry that after two or
Yeah.
three of those in a day. That's a lot. I
Yeah.
experienced that personally as a grief counselor myself. Yeah.
Yeah. The vulnerability required as an NLP client is more about the willingness to sort of trust what the unconscious mind is offering in terms of the responses to my questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Where can we get a copy of Smiling in the Shower?
Oh, yes. The best way to do that is my website. It's Tonia, Tonia Winchester.com. And that takes you right to the book page, actually.
Easy enough. There will be a link in the show notes, so people can just check that to find you directly. Go find her and get the book. I'm just going to go ahead and full on recommend it. I did, and I can't wait to read it. And I think that there's some great stuff in store for me and my creative process. Is there anything else you would like to leave my audience with?
Yes, everything is changeable, and accessing creativity, whether that comes naturally to you or whether you need sort of help and guidance to get access to that, is I think the ultimate healing tool. I think it's just we're gifted with this ability to make something that never existed before as humans, and that's good for us, and it's good for the people around us. And I think more and more we need to be doing more good for us and the people around us. So yeah, do what you need to do to access your creativity. I think that's really important.
Great message. Dr. Tonia Winchester, I want to thank you for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to get to know you a little more through your work. And after I finish the book, maybe I'll invite you back and I can tell you exactly what I thought of it.
That would be amazing. Thank you again for having me. I hope this was helpful.
Very much so. I want to thank Dr. Tonia Winchester for joining me today. What a delightful individual, such a sunny person. And I truly, truly enjoyed having the conversation with her that you just listened to. I actually hope to have her back for another visit sometime in the future. I did edit out a few giggles, but you'll notice that I left a few in because I wanted you to know how much fun this conversation was and how much fun it can be when you're really accessing the best parts of yourself and really just opening up and letting yourself realize your full potential creatively and otherwise. Certainly, it seems that Dr. Winchester does. I feel like she brought out the best in me, and I hope she brought out something wonderful in you. There are links in the show notes so that you can learn more about Dr. Winchester and her book, and a little bit more about NLP as well. So please do check out the show notes. My parting thought for today, I thought would be in keeping with what we've learned during this episode, and it's a poem. Now, I'm going to tell you right up front, poetry has never been a form of creative expression that I've particularly felt connected to. And I don't know that I do the greatest job in the world of interpreting poetry, but I can read, and I can read with some panache. So I am going to bring you a poem called Pain Ends. It's by Katie A. Brown, and it has definitely been making the rounds on the internet. And I'd like to share that with you today as my parting thought. Breathe in the fresh air. Put your mind at ease. Let down your hair. Let it flow in the breeze. Let your eyes wander to all the beauty to be seen. If those toxic thoughts you still do ponder, then let out a scream. Scream until the pain is gone, until you no longer feel afraid. Open your eyes to a new dawn. Let the darkness fade. No longer compare yourself or your flaws to others' perfections. Take the negativity off the shelf. Focus on your direction. Pick the sadness up off the floor. Sweep it into the wind. Close the door on self-hatred and never let it back in. For the lies it would often tell you, you will no longer agree. Happiness and love are what you should hold on to. They are whom you should give the key. Pay no attention to toxic thoughts. Listen to those who adore everything you are. Overthinking was what you once were taught, but now those thoughts have put you in a jar. Focus on your goals. Never lose your fight. It's time to open new scrolls. Everything will be all right. I cannot think of a better note to leave you on. And so for now, I'm saying thanks for listening. Come on back, and I'll see you next time. Cool Gray in Studio A is a fine-tuned services production. It exists for entertainment purposes and is not intended to be used as a sole source of information or advice on any subject. Find and follow this podcast at coolgraystudios.com.